So hi class, this lecture will help you understand how to do the edTPA assignment part 3. It's due, parts 1, 2, and 3 are due on April 7th. Now I know you've worked on parts 1 and 2, but you just will upload all 3 of these parts to the link in the folder for April 7th, and it should contain revisions based on feedback that I made and I gave you for 1 and 2. So parts 1, 2 revised, and also your new part 3. Part 3 is the trickiest part of this assignment. So I'm glad you're watching this video. We're going to go through it step by step. So let's read the prompt for part 3. It says, theory and research. How is the teaching you propose supported by research and theory about how students learn? Be specific in supporting your ideas with one or more of the following specific theories. So the theories are listed here. We haven't gotten to all of them yet. I think we've gotten down through Skinner. Maslow and attribution and expectancy are coming up, but if you want to, you can look those up in the textbook and use those as well. You can't use constructivism and you can't use direct teaching because those are not theories. Those are teaching approaches built on these theories. So these are the theories you have to use, one or more of these. In this section, you really have to define the theoretical foundation for your lesson. So let's take a look at how a response to that question might go. My lesson is a social studies lesson designed to be taught in an 8th grade classroom. It requires that students research primary and secondary sources on the civil rights movement of the 1960s and come to some conclusions about the causes and outcomes of that movement. So you give a few sentences overview of the lesson that you presented in part 1. Students will have been pre-assessed on prerequisites for the lesson, which is whether they can distinguish between primary and secondary sources and whether they know how each source is used. If students do not have that knowledge, they will be taught a mini lesson prior to beginning the instruction provided in the main lesson. So a little bit about what's leading up to that lesson. According to Vygotsky's theory of cognitive development, learning takes place most effectively when students are within their zone of proximal development. Slavin, 2018, page 34. So here I reference the first theory, which is Vygotsky. I give a quote to support that I'm not just getting this out on my own, and I provide a page number and an exact quote. So you don't have to do this throughout, but sprinkling it in, it's a good idea. And so it is necessary to pre-assess students not only the prerequisites, but also what they know about the civil rights movement. From this pre-assessment, I will split the class into 2 groups based on their knowledge and differentiate as described in section 4 below. So section 4 asks how you differentiate by ability or some other way. So it's not a bad idea to scan over those questions and be thinking ahead so that you can address them here as I've done. So did you see how I wove in the ZPD, the zone of proximal development, with the need to pre-assess students, because you've got to know where they are on that learning ladder that we've talked about. The next one asked, explain how you would engage students in the lesson, use research and theory. So what might a response for that look like? Because the first person in my lesson is direct instruction, I will first make sure that students are familiar with the learning objective. Not only will I tell them the objective, but I will post it on full display while we are doing the unit. The objective will be written in student-friendly language so that they would know exactly what's expected in terms of content, knowledge, and skills. I will kick off the lesson by asking students to respond to a series of questions with a yes/no on their whiteboards. These questions will function both as other pre-assessments for Kohlberg's theory of moral development and as a way to engage students deeply in the upcoming topic. According to Piaget, students make sense of their own environments and learn through their own experiences. The question will tap into students' previous experiences with questions such as fairness and laws. For example, one question will state, some laws may be unjust and need to be changed. So here again, we're drawing from a couple of theories to support what we're doing in the lesson. The last prompt is making learning relevant. Describe how your instruction would link students' prior academic learning and personal, cultural, or community assets with new learning. So what might an response to this look like? I will make learning relevant to students by asking them to write a 5-minute response to the question, have you ever felt that there were a time that things were unfair? If so, what did you do and why? Not only will this allow me to connect the lesson to personal experiences, but will also allow me to assess where students might be on Kohlberg's stages of moral reasoning. If students are at the authoritative stage, they will be less likely to understand that some laws are wrong and may need to be changed, which will directly impact how they deal with the unit. I will need to adjust instruction for their stages of development. Next, I will lead a classroom discussion using learning probes to draw out their previous experiences before segueing into the essential unfairness that Black Americans experienced and that led to the civil rights movement. I will ask them what they did when they experienced their unfair situation. According to Piaget's theory of cognitive development, many students at this age are entering the formal operational stage, and so exhibit the ability to think hypothetically. So I will ask them to hypothesize what they might have done if they had experienced discrimination due to some of the Jim Crow laws in the South. And so this is an example. I can write more, obviously, but I want to give you a small taste of what a reasonable anchor paper might look like. This anchor paper is in this week's module, and I've also put it in the assignments folder. I would suggest that you have it nearby when you're writing a response. These don't have to be terribly long, but they do have to be well thought out and supported. You can use your textbook for support or other resources you find on the internet. If you do provide a citation, please provide a reference at the end of the page.